And Professor Conrad Matthee from Stellenbosch University joins us in our Cape Town studio for more about the project as well as these misunderstood beasts. Conrad, thank you so much for joining us. Now, talk us through some of the pioneering research that you are overseeing, especially what you're doing at looking at eco-friendly barriers for sharks.
Okay, so what we're doing is that sharks' numbers have declined drastically during the last 20 years, for some species up to 90%. And clearly this cannot be a sustainable way of looking at our resources in the ocean, because sharks are top predators, so they are very important animals for the whole ecosystem. If you take them out, you cause lots of damage lower down. So one of the arguments are that shark numbers are really declining, especially the great white shark, due to shark nets, and we would try and limit this by giving a barrier, an eco-friendly barrier, which is biomimicry basically, where we use a barrier system that looks like kelp. We put magnets in these black pipes, and to sharks it looks like a kelp barrier. They don't go into kelp when they chase seals regularly, therefore we thought make it look like kelp and the sharks won't enter. Add magnetism to it, we can keep them out without catching them. They do not cross these barriers that we've put in place for the last 2 years.
Conrad, how far are these studies? When are we likely to see these eco-friendly kelp barriers being used extensively?
As we're sitting here, my colleagues are speaking to the engineers to help us a little bit further in the process to refine the methods that we currently use, or more the structure that we currently use. And if they can help us with actually doing that, we can do a proper cost estimate. And then it's up to a municipality or a local government to say, we are interested to employ this eco-friendly barrier system. They have to come up with some money, which obviously it's going to cost money, and then we can install it. At this stage, our barrier system has been tested as a straight line. We haven't made a full enclosure yet, which is what we plan to do at the beach stage. So at the beach, we would like to build a cage around the beach so that no sharks can come in. We've built a barrier, a long line. We know that they don't cross, they always swim around the line, and they never come through the barrier system. So we believe if we make a cage, it will keep them actually out. So it's ready. But we need funding, and we need the municipalities to come forward and say we would like to actually put this in.
Of course, that's great news for skeptics like me who don't really believe much of this research that has come out suggesting that sharks, in terms of their behavioral patterns, are actually social animals, intelligent animals, and even playful. Can you give us a little bit of insight around the misconceptions that the general public has about these great beasts?
Yeah, a lot of the misconceptions, I believe, is due to movies such as Jaws. People think sharks are killers and they're out there to hunt people. And that is absolutely not true. Sharks are actually carnivores. In their young stage, in white sharks, they eat fish. As they grow older, like a 4-meter and bigger shark would mainly eat seals and marine mammals. They change their teeth to actually specifically hunt either fish in a younger stage, mammals at an older stage. And what they do is they would come to prey and they may take a taste because they're not sure what it is in the water. The unfortunate situation is if they do taste a human being, given their size, it's normally fatal because people will bleed to death. But hardly ever sharks would eat those carcasses. I mean, they would bite and they would leave because they do not recognize humans as being food sources. Therefore, there's a lot of these things out there thinking that sharks are incredible hunters and predators out there to catch people, and that's absolutely not true. We know how many sharks are in our waters. We've estimated approximately 500 at Gansbaai. They migrate slightly. They do visit Mossel Bay and those areas at sometimes. But basically, the contact between sharks and humans are way more than what humans realize, and the sharks simply just don't attack humans because it's not in their nature.
Conrad, let's go a little bit deeper into the migration patterns. Obviously, I understand that through tagging, you're able to track where sharks go and their movements. Can you give us a little bit of insight around the bigger trends that you see from these migration patterns?
My expertise is more long-term migration patterns. Since we work on the genetics of these sharks, there's quite a few studies out now that show that many of these great white sharks basically form a resident population. So my PhD student Sarah Andreotti has now been studying these sharks for 4 or 5 years, and she's identified approximately 500 or 420 sharks in the Gansbaai area. Now these ones stay pretty constant. For every time now that she sees a new shark, she sees the same shark like over and over. So you'll see the same shark. Out of 7 sightings, 6 will be re-sightings, 1 will be a new sighting. Therefore, we know that these sharks are more or less resident. What is interesting is that most of these studies are done from shark diving vessels, which means that they use fish to attract these sharks, meaning that it's more the juvenile population. We don't have any idea what the adults are actually doing, but from satellite tagging studies done by other people, they have seen that the majority of these sharks are staying resident in some small area.
Conrad, very quickly, why is South Africa one of the best places in the world to study great white sharks?
Well, South Africa is also known as a biodiversity-rich area. So our oceans are incredibly, can we say, wealthy in terms of what they can provide to predators. For these big sharks, they obviously need food. There are lots of seals along our coastline, there are fish along our coastline, and this rich resource that we have along our coastline also provide a habitat that's suitable for the great whites. Therefore, in South Africa, or in the world, South Africa is probably one of the best places to actually come to see them, since the concentrations are pretty high.
Conrad, thank you so much for joining us. That's where we'll leave it for today. Of course, that was Professor Conrad Matthee from Stellenbosch University.